Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on National Mentoring Day. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Adam Mitchison. I am the CEO and co-founder of the intelligent mentoring platform, my2be. We're here today with a few people who are experts in mentoring from the tech industry, including Steph Kong from Zoom, Diane Soller from Assent, Bian Zhang from Nextdoor, and Ian Storer from this space. The idea of this session is that we're going to be discussing the impact of mentoring from a number of different angles, focusing on things like diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, the impact on the corporate world, the individual side of it as well. I'll let everyone now make a brief introduction to themselves. I'll start off with you, Diana.
Amazing. Thank you everyone for taking the time to join. I really look forward to this discussion. I'm Diana. I'm located in Montreal, Canada. Mentoring has been a huge part of my life. I am a mentee, I am a mentor, and I aim to continue to be both of those for as long as I can. So that's a little bit about me and why I'm here.
Thank you, Diana. Bian?
Hi, everybody. My name is Bian. I'm a software engineer on the Nextdoor. I run a company-wide program called Engineering Mentorship Program, or EMP for short. I believe mentoring is a great way of learning on both sides for mentor and mentees. So I've been mentored by great people, and I wanted to contribute back to the community. That's why I'm starting the program. I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you, Bian. Steph?
Hey everybody, I'm Steph. I just recently got promoted from a technical support engineer role to a senior technical support engineer role. Mentoring has been a huge factor in being able to get the promotion, get to where I am right now, and then also it's helped me personally. And so that's why I'm here a part of this discussion today, and I'm just really excited to be here with y'all.
Thank you, Steph. And finally, Ian.
Thanks, Adam. Steph, can you put in a word? We need some emoji reactions in the webinar for Zoom because I was looking for it and I couldn't find it. Well done on the promotion. So Ian Storer, co-founder and CEO of this space. We're opening doors for community through a market network of spaces, groups, and events. And my sort of connection to mentoring in this conversation is actually Steph and I. We're in a mentor-mentee relationship when we both worked at Box. Not so long ago, and worked with my2be. So I'm a very excited, passionate supporter of the work that you're doing, Adam, and that we're talking about today.
Thank you, Ian. And just for the benefit of the attendees, you can pop any questions you have in the Q&A. We have a Q&A section at the end of the discussion, but if we see a relevant question whilst we're on a particular topic, we'll happily answer it throughout. So I'll just get started then with Ian, with you actually, and what mentoring actually means to you.
It's a great question, and it's difficult because I think it often has a very fuzzy concept. People don't necessarily know exactly what they mean by it. They know when they see it, they know what it's not, but it's hard still to define it. I think of it as a combination of sharing wisdom, and that goes both ways in a mentoring relationship. In sort of the empathy and being there as a person who can be an empathetic listener, but also maybe give advice sometimes, but not all of the time. And so those are I guess wisdom and empathy are two of the key concepts to me that are part of a mentoring relationship. And we may talk about this more, but there are lots of things I think it's not, and there are clearly things that it can be confused with, which we'll get into later, but that's how I would try to define it at this point.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, we know there's misconceptions, there's overlaps with things like coaching and even management. Diana, I know you've seen that in your experience. If you want to elaborate on what mentoring means to you with that.
Absolutely. So I've pivoted my career twice, and I realized that during the intro I didn't say what I do. I'm director of product operations, and it's through mentoring that I've gained the knowledge and the confidence that I need to be able to make those pivots. Of course, I do a lot of investment in learning, but it's being able to reach out to key individuals to have those questions and to just give me a better understanding. I do continue to seek mentors, and also as a mentee, it's helped me develop a lot my leadership style, my communication style. In my spare time, I volunteer and mentor for two very special organizations. The first one's called Technovation. It empowers young girls to identify problems in their community and create tech and engineering solutions that develop their leadership and creative problem-solving skills. The second organization, it promotes the success of Latin American STEM professionals in Canada's technology market. Now, I relate to those two organizations very much. And it's important that when I do select which organizations to mentor for, individuals to mentor for, that I can make that personal connection with them.
Yes, absolutely, and you've touched on something there that we'll come back to in the sort of role model identification with mentorship and that recognition of someone who's maybe had a similar experience for you, which we will come back to actually. But on that idea of being a mentor and a mentee, Bian, I know you've had experience with that as well. So if you could just tell us a bit more about the way you've had that from both the mentor side and the mentee side.
Yeah, for sure. I think when I was a junior engineer several years ago, I learned from great people. And what's more important is I was not learning technical stuff. For example, how to use this technology, how to create a system. But more than that, I was learning a lot about soft skills like communication, collaboration, especially inter-team collaboration, as well as project management. So all of those skill sets were not easily learned from the daily job from engineers. And over time, I feel like mentoring and mentorship is a great source of learning those skill sets. And I do want to make those efforts recognized. For example, I was doing like part-time mentoring in my previous jobs, but in Nextdoor, I wanted those mentors to be recognized as one of their contributions to the company and to the team. That's why I was running official program, and I'm partnering with my2be so that we can make this official platform and program instead of some like private spreadsheet running on my laptop. I think that's very important, especially for mentors, because they will feel motivated to contribute more because their efforts are officially recognized as their contribution as important as their, for example, coding or software engineering.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the recognition that mentors should receive, as by doing a good job, is definitely something that can go missing when a program isn't being captured. And thank you for the nice plug on my2be and the work we're doing together at the moment. That is exactly what we're here to do. You mentioned there around the skill set from away from engineering, the soft skill side of things. Stephanie, we know you've had a particular experience with this. I'd say from a confidence point of view is something that we saw firsthand whilst we were working with you at Box. If you want just to tell us a bit more about that side of things as a mentee and how it helped you to essentially share your story.
Yeah, so Box for me wasn't too long ago. To give everyone some context, I currently work for Zoom right now. And, like starting out when I was at Box, I was pretty much a recent grad. And during that time, you're sort of still curious, like I'm in my 20s, and like during my time at Box, like I was focused on building out professional skill sets, and typically people they think of mentorship as just like, hey, like I'm here to like learn a new skill, etc. But like, life happens and there's a lot of life events that can put pressure, and you have to prioritize your mental health. Otherwise, you're not really effective at doing your day-to-day. And I think when I was at my2be or during the time at Box, which was a couple years ago during COVID and during the hate attacks on Asian Americans, I felt like really like I was going to have like a mental breakdown because I was experiencing some of that hate. I also live in Texas, and so it was very scary for me. And I've shared this through the my2be program. The piece of myself that was really hard for me to come to terms with was that I come from child welfare, and like, being Asian and, sharing that in the tech industry where, most people that I've talked with at Box and even in the tech world, usually they come from, like, Asian families come from Stanford, some Ivy League school, or they're international. Child welfare is like very, there's a huge stigma on it. People are seen as aggressive, like, they don't really think of Asian Americans being in it. And so I reached that point where it's like, shit, like, if I don't get help for this, like, I feel like I'm going to lose my job and be homeless. And so mentoring and going through my2be and being paired up with Ian, it helped me like have that space spot where I can run things by Ian. Like, Ian was not in my direct area of work, like he was not my direct manager or like worked closely with me. So he was an older adult, like older colleague or mentor that I can run ideas by. And when I ran it by him and I saw how reciprocal he was and empathetic, it helped me be more comfortable in sharing to a small group of people first and then slowly expanding that out. And I felt like right now, even I feel a lot more confident with my story. I feel a lot better. It's just been a huge weight lift, not having to worry about like, oh, like what will this person think? I come from this background, etc. And beyond the professional skill set, I feel like I've grown like a lot personally in learning how to do things that maybe people learned early as kids. So that's just a brief summary about how my2be has helped me, and then mentorship in general.
Thanks for that, Steph. And yeah, I remember this happening at the time, and it was a real eye opener for us. I think from we talk about DEIB as a particular area where mentoring can have a huge impact. And when you shared your story with us, I think that made us realize the sheer spectrum of what that actually involves. Inclusion and belonging in particular is, people are going through their own things. There's different things you're not aware of. And if there's one story, then how many other stories are out there of people having an experience that we don't know about and aren't aware of? And I remember that coming to light. And I think this is something quite relevant still now. This, in fact, if not more so, in that we're seeing a lot of companies talking about the current situation where there's maybe been, looking at the macroeconomic effects that are happening on the world with things like maybe layoffs or downsizing or hiring freezes. And there's quite a bit of burnout going on with people, especially in the tech world. And we're seeing where, companies are then having to absolutely maximize the potential of the people they have there, but without trying to, stretch them even thinner and actually, burn them out. And I think that's a really important point where you mentioned about like Ian not being in your direct report or not being in your area or manager, that you could have that sounding board. And I just want to bring that point to light, actually, because we mentioned this very briefly earlier on. Deanna, you've been a huge advocate and a great example of being able to mentor people who are, junior to you, who you are the embodiment of what they are now, and you've been through the experience that they'll go through. And Ian, you have actually been the opposite of that, where you've mentored Steph in an experience that you'd never been through. So I'd like you to just share the side of things there from your perspective and what you've seen work and what doesn't, and why it's so important to have that representation as well. So if Dan, I'll let you start there.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, something I mentioned that is very present to me is like our journeys are very long. And so when we talk about, and I think we're going to discuss in a little bit, like when is it a good time to be a mentor? Really, the journey is long. So you can start at any moment because there's pieces throughout your journey that you can share. And if you can help someone accelerate or not take away an opportunity from them to go through an experience and learn from it, but at least help them better navigate it. At least that's been incredibly helpful for me. As I mentioned before, I've pivoted my career twice, and it was really important to connect with individuals that could help me. And it was something as simple as, how do I speak to this new audience at a level? So it's knowing how to be a good mentee, but also knowing how to be a good mentor, and maybe breaking some of those expectations. And you go into it, you have to be vulnerable. By the way, Steph, every time I hear your story, I'm always so inspired by you. I think you're an incredible human being, and everything Ian has done, I'm really inspired by both of you. But it's important that we come to the table both as mentees and as mentors with clear understanding of what we want, kind of diminish some of those expectations that we put for ourselves, and just come with an open heart and an open mind.
Absolutely.
So Adam, the question was sort of how I've come at becoming a mentor.
So I was looking at I suppose it was more looking at like, you know, we know within the tech industry, representation in more senior roles is not balanced. And I know Deanna's been a great example of this and also very passionate about it. Whereas I think with the example we've just shared with yourself and Steph, there's the other side of it there. And so it's just more about your experience in that and how you were able to, you know, be conscious of that, but also then act as a good mentor.
Well, I mean, I've been fortunate, and it's slightly jarring to hear Steph describe me as an older man. I guess I just turned 40, so I think I am, unfortunately. But so I've had a career of probably about 20 years in different, you know, like Deanna, pivoting in my career. I started out in politics, campaigning, doing grassroots organizing. Then I went into nonprofits in DC. Then I went into being an analyst at Gartner for 8 years. And then I went into tech, and then I became an entrepreneur. So I've done different things. And like if you told me where I'd be today 20 years ago, I would not have believed you. But the key thing along every step of that journey was having older people, usually mentors, men and women, probably mostly white, but not exclusively. And I'm thinking of all the people who've mentored me in different ways throughout my career, sometimes multiple people at the same time throughout that, and have helped me. And now I'm in different relationships with some of them. One of my early mentors, Jennifer, is now one of my co-founders. And I've known her for over 20 years, and she's older than I am, and we've stayed in touch. And then I asked her to join me with this space, and we've been working together for a while now. So I think you said it's a long journey. It's also a cycle. And to me, it's just kind of second nature now. It's about giving back, but that even sounds almost trite. It's just the way that I have found to be the best way to live, the best way to succeed in life, is to be in relationship with other people and to form these relationships, these bonds of mutual trust, where you can share and grow together and learn. And but I think one of the points you were getting at was, I am a white man in his 40s. I come from, based on the way I look and sound, you know, I have a certain background and profile. And so I signed up for the program with my2be at Box just because it was the kind of thing that I was interested in doing and had always been up for, and I knew Adam, you know, as well. So it was kind of a motivator to be involved. And to me, I spoke to lots of different people. We did the whole interview process of matching with different candidates, and I could have gone with various other candidates who might have been a good fit to mentor, but I think I just responded to with empathy, and also this sort of Steph is very charismatic, and so I just responded to that and said I feel like I should reach out to Steph and say I would be privileged to be your mentor if you would like to do that with me. And so that was kind of partly just that feeling that that's where I should be showing up in the workplace, but also recognizing that I could have picked any of the sales guys that I had met with. I didn't know what I was going to offer them. Steph was in support and in a technical role. I was in marketing, and I'm not even really a marketer by background. So like our professional distance was very wide, never mind everything else. And so it just felt like sometimes you've got to look for those unexpected connections, and the universe or whatever higher power you might be invoking is bringing you to be there in that relationship. So that I think it's very important for people like me who had the benefit of support and a lot of privilege in my life to also then be part of the solution of raising up and supporting underrepresented people and rising executives, rising talent.
Absolutely. And I think that's, again, one of the major outcomes we saw and have seen with the continuous work we do at Box, is that focus on developing underrepresented talent through mentoring. And it's people like yourself being involved that's helping to bridge that gap, to help those people become from less represented into more represented roles, senior up. And I think one thing that we've also touched on is about the the learning side as a mentor, what it actually does for you. I think a lot of people sign up as a mentor when they get involved in a program, either through just sheer goodwill, maybe doing a bit of giving back, but I think they maybe aren't aware of the learning that they will get from it, and the experience that they will get and how it actually elevates them. And we know statistically, actually, mentors do better out of the relationship, usually because they're starting on a higher level of experience or a higher grade, and adding to that additional skill set that they already have helps elevate them even further. Bian, I know this is something you've experienced and seen on that side of things. So just touch on, acting as a mentor, the learning side of things, and the benefit that you've seen with the program at Nextdoor.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Nextdoor, I've seen people being both mentor and mentees at the same time, because they are in the middle of their career stage and they can mentor junior engineers, and they themselves also need some mentoring from senior people. And regarding the benefit of mentoring, of course, everybody knows as a mentee, they can benefit from the mentorship. But what I learned most throughout those years of mentorship is all of my mentees somehow became my mentor in some sense, because when I look into their experience, I always find them inspiring in different areas. And also, I think Diana mentioned a key word, which is vulnerability. I think that leads to the trust between the mentor and mentees, especially for engineers. Engineers are naturally very self-esteemed. When I first talk to them, maybe their first reaction is, why do I need a mentor? Why does somebody else need to tell me what to do? So I think the trust plays a very key role here. And my strategy is always being vulnerable, as Diana mentioned. For example, when I share with my mentees my past experience, I always share my failures. I made lots of mistakes. I'm still making mistakes from time to time. But sharing the mistakes as well as what I learned from those mistakes will make the mentees resonate about what we are doing and what we are facing with, especially when we are in the same company facing with the same challenges. I think sharing the same experience will gain their trust, and eventually they are willing to open them up to the mentorship. And I'm sure the same as you guys as well. Mentorship in Nextdoor are not one-to-many. It's always one-on-one, and it's always private and personally tailored. So it's totally different from training, where there's an instructor and there's one curriculum. And I always believe the mentorship should be without any curriculum, always many curriculums, one per each pair. Only when we do that, we can adjust the mentorship to everybody's needs and get the most benefit out of it.
Absolutely. I think there's a couple of really key points that you've talked on there. I think trust is ultimately the biggest factor, I think, in any relationship, and being able to trust the person you're sharing information with is going to help bring the best out of you, both of you, actually, and that empathy to say that you can hold your hands up as a mentor and say, I've made mistakes in the past and I'm not perfect, giving the mentee that freedom to be able to go and do the same. Steph, from your point of view, I think that was obviously a massive factor in what helped to shape your mentorship experience, was the trust side of things. So just if we go like right back, when you first entered that relationship, how did you get past that in your own sort of mind? How did you just like express it straight away? Did it take a bit of time? Was it, and how did that build?
I think I just reached the point where like I was in a place where there was like a lot of Asian hate attacks at that point, and really like not having any family present in Texas, or supportive family members while going through that, it makes it very scary. And like as an early entry worker, yeah, like you might have some therapy sessions, but they run out, right? So like, what do you do? Because at Box, I think we had only like 4 Lyra sessions that I did use our benefits and like whatever I could. And so, at the same time, I was also like, again, like, for me, it was not comfortable to tell my direct manager or like peers, because they're similar to my age, because it was just like, well, I work from with them day to day, like, you know, if there's any impact, I'm sure, like, if I don't want them, like, you know, thinking I'm a certain way. And so at that point, like, in my mind, it was like, okay, like, since I'm a part of this mentoring program, telling Ian, since we're in completely different fields and we're not going to be working, you know, like, on a day-to-day, I'm not going to have to, like, you know, do tasks. And you know, it made it less intimidating because of that. And so for that reason, and also the things that have been bottling up, that's why I reached out. And at the time, like with COVID, there was also like the tech recession, and like everyone was doing a bunch of layoffs, et cetera, similar to how we're still in it right now. And so that's why, you know, if I was going to say something, like, or if something bad was going to happen, because I didn't have any representation, or like, at least in the tech world, like, I haven't heard of any like foster youth or child welfare early 20-year-olds like being up here. So I didn't know the outcome. Like, you don't know. And I think it goes back to what Ian said. It's sort of the universe brought us together. Like, I wasn't looking for Ian. I wasn't looking for, oh, I'm going to find someone who's in a completely different field and like who's a lot older. There was no picture in my mind. I remember that my2be, or during that time when you had this mentorship program at Box, we had office hours. I asked a few curious questions. Ian liked my enthusiasm and he reached out, and like, it was the answer I needed. Like, for me, I was like, oh God, like, what do I do? Like, I've run out of leader sessions. I don't really have like a lot of money. Again, like, like, for me, I'm an hourly employee at Box, and so we had some of our hours cut. Again, like with overtime, etc. So I was just like, okay, so now I'm like working, and but I'm also having to take out some money out of my savings. It was just really scary. So like, there was just a lot going on, and so I just word vomited on Ian. And sometimes, like, when you don't have like the sessions or like money to go to therapy, it's like, okay, well, someone's gonna have to eat my word vomit, and it ended up being Ian. And luckily it was like again, like a safe space for me. Like, I cried a lot. It was not easy. I feel like even getting here, I talk quickly because it does give me, like, you know, like going through and reliving and, you know, thinking about all the progress to where I had to like work on myself to be able to like speak about it without crying, etc. It took a lot of time, but again, like, it's just like, I'm still a work in progress. But again, like, that's how it all happens. Sometimes, like, when you go through mentorship, or like when someone reaches out, they saw something in you. And so like, to the audience, if someone does that, it shows like that they care. And so that's the takeaway that I guess I got from, like, you know, going through the program at my2be. So I hope that answers.
It absolutely does, and it's every time we hear it, it's always a reminder of why we do what we do, and always an inspiration to hear it. So thank you again for that.
Can I just jump in? And I won't comment on the word vomit, but as an image at least. But I think that finding somebody, and I've experienced this, but the mentorships or relationships are deeply personal. They become deeply personal. They don't start. You're often it's a stranger or somebody that you kind of know from an arm's length distance in a professional setting, and then somehow something clicks in, and you realize often it's not even intentional, which is why I think one of the reasons that my2be is so important is because you're creating that intentionality and creating a better vehicle for that to happen. In my career, I don't think I was ever in a formal mentoring program until I met Steph, but it's that connection, and I think you put it beautifully, Steph. Just when you find that, and when you realize that there is that genuine sort of warmth in it, but also it's not a friendship, it's not anything else, but there is that kind of, it's hard to define what that is. That connection that brings mentee-mentor relationships together. You just have to embrace it and move into it, which I think is exactly what happened in that session, where I felt Steph is the person I need to reach out to, even though I talked to other people. I wasn't assuming that she would be interested in working with me or having that relationship, but that was kind of the moment for me.
Yeah, and I think that's something we get asked all the time is like around what makes a good mentor, and the most common answer we give is a good listener. A lot of mentorship we see is about listening. It's about, you're not there to tell people how to do something or what to do. You're there to listen to what they have to say, take it in, and draw on your experience. So I think that's like a really like important point around mentoring, and that's perfect example there is like you saying you took on board and listened to that. And I think, Deanna, you've had a lot of that experience as well with the people you've mentored, and having to, like, say, especially, I think one thing I suppose is listening is one huge facet of mentorship and being a mentor. How do you then take what you've heard, especially if it's quite a sensitive subject, and then actually help the mentee move forward from what you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking of one particular mentee I had. She came to me with a lot of frustration. We are ex-colleagues, so we were not in a mentee-mentor relationship while we were working together. She came to me after I had left, and I believe it was because she had seen my evolution of like pivoting my career and achieving success in a completely other facet of the business. And so she came and she was very, very frustrated. So I felt like I just need to listen for now, and I need to ask questions and help her arrive at like her own conclusions and her own learnings. And it took several sessions, and they were weekly. Yeah, it does sound a little bit like therapy. And I told her at the end, I'll tell you what I would do, but I'm only going to tell you what I would do once you've come up with your own solution or your own approach. And then it was going back, and she learned like, yeah, she definitely next time would react differently, et cetera, et cetera. But so a lot of the conversations with this individual, I appreciated because they were very honest. She was very vulnerable. There was a lot of listening. But also it got very detailed. Like, so she would say, well, in this specific situation, what would you say? So she was looking for practical takeaways that she could apply. Yeah, that's the experience that I have there.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, everyone here has experienced mentorship in the corporate side of things as well. And, you know, I've been very fortunate enough to work with most of you already, and hopefully, you know, in the future as well. And I think the one thing we still often wonder why is there any barriers to entry for mentorship in the corporate world? What are you seeing? And I think we see the common things really. People think it might take too much time and effort. The reason we exist as a platform is because we know when people try and start, they'll start, as you mentioned before, Bian, with a spreadsheet trying to match people manually and things like that. So we know about that side of things as a blocker and a barrier. So I suppose like the fact that you've all been part of those things, but you know, we've been talking about the success of it here. How would people in the attendees here listening today, how if they want to champion something in a program or a mentorship within the workplace, how would they overcome it in the way that you've seen help break down the barriers internally?
Yeah, I can share my experience. So generally, we at Nextdoor, we don't see any problem on the mentor side of joining the program, because mentors are naturally willing to help. They wanted to share their experience and their expertise with other engineers. I think we do see a little bit hesitation from the mentee side because of the pre-perception of the program. And I totally agree that's a misperception. For example, some of them are picturing the mentorship as a teacher-student relationship, where I join a lecture and I was taught something by somebody else. Or some people are thinking I'm getting second manager in different areas. Those are the misperceptions we are trying to clarify as much as possible. So we make that very clear that it's not a student-teacher relationship. It's more like, as you mentioned, it's more like a listener and supporter. And the mentee is the one who is driving the mentorship instead of the mentor. So you're not getting a training, you're not getting a class, you are getting help from somebody else, but you need to let them know how you want to be helped and which area you want to work on. Another challenge I'm seeing is, especially in the engineering area, is sometimes the engineer does not know where they need improvement, especially when they are heading down in their daily work. They are busy with coding, debugging, troubleshooting, but they less often back up a little bit and see the big picture. For example, besides doing the daily work, maybe they can look into inter-team collaboration or a better time management to make them more efficient, so that they can become a better engineer, even a better person. I think those are the areas we as mentors need to work with them. Usually, to solve this challenge, my first session with mentees is always asking them to describe one of their typical workday, from when they sit in front of the computer to they like close their laptop. And along with their description, usually I could identify areas which could be done differently. And that's where the conversations starts. And all the following sessions, like 6 or 7 sessions, are based on the areas we identified together. And sometimes maybe they even don't realize them by themselves. But after they're talking, they start to realize, oh, I could do this. I could do this way, which is more efficient. I generally find that's the way to either identify the areas to work on or create the bonding between us and gain trust from the mentees.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. A comment we see quite commonly is about mentorship is it's learning through stealth. So as you mentioned before, there's no set curriculum, but you'll develop skills in different ways through different conversations and different realizations. And that's where I think, going back to your point, Deanna, about pivoting and how that moves, into different directions, it can be from those conversations. I'll come on to that in a sec. Ian, I know you had a point around that you want to add to it.
I have 2 points, if I could make them. One is around back to the nature of mentoring, and the second one is how you get sort of how you build support for mentoring in the organization. But so the first one is, at least this is my opinion, mentoring is really about the mentor and the mentee. It's not about the company or anything else. It's really about the mentee as much as anything, but the mentor. And so it's a 2-person relationship. It's not about staying in that company or making sure that that person is successful for that company, or other concepts that could be detract from that, the importance of the individual human beings and the success of those humans as human beings in that relationship. So in my view, that doesn't mean that it can't mean that it's not about getting the promotion or succeeding in your job or getting coaching on where you're not doing as good a job as you would like, all those things. But at the end of the day, it's about that human being flourishing. And in fact, the result of the mentoring relationship that Steph and I had was that Steph left Box and went to Zoom. And that was difficult for me because I felt some conflict, like, should I be, but I was very clear, at the end of the day, that my goal was for Steph to be successful as Steph. And if that meant that she got the promotion at Box, great. If it meant she got the promotion and the move to Zoom, great. It went that way. The second point I would make about that sort of way to build support for mentoring, it's probably not starting with what I just said, because somebody up above will say, well, we can't have that, people will leave. But what I saw was in that program that I joined was very senior leaders being part of the program. I think the chief marketing officer was signed up. There were the chief revenue officer. There were very senior executives, and all the way down to managers or whatever the lower level. I mean, anybody can be a mentor. And so I saw the full spectrum of seniority across the company, different departments being part of that program. And I think that gave visibility, credibility, cover to everybody to participate. And I think that was really powerful.
Yeah, that's a really important point, actually, about senior buy-in. If you're going to have a program that's going to have an impact and expand across the organization, then senior buy-in certainly helps. Deanna, so you want to add to this?
Yeah, I was going to mention that, like, I am a woman of color, and I seek mentees that also are women of color. And I look, like, when I enter a virtual room, even now that we're still in this pandemic, I look around the room and I say, and I just take a poll of, like, who's here, who's speaking. And one of the mentees that I selected, like, I reached out to her. She was very silent. I knew she had a lot to say because I had had one-on-one meetings with her, and she could clearly articulate her mission or like her goal. She had great ideas, but when we'd come into an environment where there were senior leaders, she would shrivel up in the corner, not say anything. And I'm like, no, you have to like, so I asked her, if I could mentor her, and she had never had a mentor. So we started out with a goal. I wanted her to feel more comfortable speaking up and sharing her ideas. And then it evolved into like a much larger conversation. But yeah, I wanted to share that because something, Ian, that you said made me think of that example. So yeah, I'll pass it on to Steph, who has her hand up.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Ian, for like your awesome comments. But basically, like adding on to like the experience I had with Ian and like what Beyond said earlier with how like mentees help guide the conversation. So I guess this ties back into like my background. So all throughout my background, I really had to be self-sufficient to get here, to even get to Box and Zoom. A lot of people who enter the child welfare system, they end up in jail and like, or they're, sexually trafficked out. I know that sounds dark, but that's what happens when CPS or Child Protective Services are involved early on. The outcomes are very dim for people who, come from like a very dysfunctional family. And then, when these challenges are at place, because, really like when you don't have parents as a child, it's like on you, like you have to be self-sufficient. You have to find the right resources. You have to learn how to network. And really that's the differentiator between, those that, can like get a job, get a career, like move on to the next steps versus someone who may repeat the cycle or repeat what they saw. Cause like growing up for me, that's what I've always saw. I've been around, like my biological father, like he was abusive, like there was always cops and like violence in my life. And I know it sounds weird, but like, these problems, it doesn't like, it's not like, hey, just because you're Asian, we're gonna like, make you this picture perfect stereotype cookie cutter Asian American. It happens to anyone. It's like, anyone can commit crime. It doesn't matter your color, your race, your socioeconomic status, anything. And so coming into Box at that point, and even now at Zoom, because I've had to learn how to be self-sufficient, independent, learn how to adult really early on, take on first gen duties. Like when I entered the mentoring program, I need to learn how to like love myself and like learn like what people learned as children. Like how do you like what does like personal relationships, caring relationships look like? Because the cycle that I've grown up with was abuse. Like I've only been around abuse, and so like that's all I know. And so a lot of people, even professionally and personally, they can take advantage of that. And that's what like I think, being around Ian and having mentors have helped cultivate an environment where I've begun identifying, okay, this is normal. Like, like parents or like mentors are supposed to call you, because that was a whole new world for me, because I didn't have that growing up. And, when I came to Box, I was like, what? Parents call their children? Wait, so you guys don't get like groceries? You're not supposed to be responsible for your family's medication? Like, I was like, what? And so like I like am learning how to like discover my inner child. Like, mentoring is like what you make of it. And so those are things that I'm learning. And I remember coming into my2be program, we had like a mentor matchmaking. So even if like people, like if they weren't paired up to be your mentors, you can still have sessions with them. And so there was another boxer or employee I met, and she like didn't take me on as her mentee, but like because she felt that I would be better paired with Ian, because we were allowed to select one during the pilot. And so I still connected with her, and I educated her on like, hey, this is what foster care looks like, this is what child welfare looks like. And she helped me with some of like how do I put it, like motherly stuff. And I was super embarrassed about it, because I was like, I don't know, like I don't really have any mother figures. And so it was very heartwarming, and I still keep up with her, and she still like, checks up on me here and there. And so it's been rewarding in that sense. So it's not just professional goals, it's really what you make of it as well. And that's my story with it. Sorry for getting like shaky in my voice, because it's still like difficult for me to talk about, but yeah, that's my story.
Thank you for sharing it, Steph. I think you've made really important points there about the impact it has, not just professionally but personally as well, and how that can shape different things that happen to you, and how you move forward, and how you might have a different opinion on something, and how you might move forward in your career and in life in general. I think that that we know that it can have such a significant impact in so many ways. I'm just going to flag just to say anyone who's in the attendee list, if you want to pop your questions in, we'll get to the Q&A in about 3 or 4 minutes. I just wanted to come back to that point there now around about the development side, how actually it can help with those career decisions. It can help with those, those pivots that you make as you move forward. I think everyone here actually on the panel has actually demonstrated a different way of how that's impacted them and how they've pivoted in different ways. Deanna, I'll come to you about, from conversations we've had where I know you've moved from a couple of different companies where you moved and you didn't find what you were after with one company. I know you were a champion of mentoring there and development, and they were just not receptive to it. And you've moved now to Assent, where you're getting much better reception and a result of that.
Yes, absolutely. In selecting, and it was part of my learning journey as a mentee. I realized I was very scattered and like I didn't know exactly what I wanted. And a mentor helped me realize and align my personal values with my professional values. And what the output was, I had a set criteria for selecting a company that I wanted to join, and it was non-negotiable. And at the very top was culture, more important than salary or compensation or title or anything. It was culture, and investing in your employees was critical for me. And so exactly, I actually left the organization where I was previously because of a lack of culture or investing in their employees, I should say. Where I am now, they do so much around diversity, inclusion, and belonging. We're already discovering how we can bring mentoring into the organization. It could happen informally, but we want to make it a formal program. And yeah, absolutely, it's the most important criteria for me.
Absolutely, and I think the formal versus informal is really key point for mentoring as well. You can have that formal structure that helps you to basically commit to something where you have a regular point in time in the calendar where you're meeting with someone regularly. But I think those informal sessions can be just as important, and being able to connect with the wider network within an organization is a huge point. So I'll with that, I think we've covered quite a bit, and I'll get on to the Q&A. So the first first question we have in is from Andrew, and it's asking, what do you think makes a good mentee? So I'll give my 2 cents on that initially. I think for me, I think being a mentee, mentees often don't really know what they want from a relationship sometimes. That can be the case. You can get some who are quite proactive and know exactly what they want to get out of a mentorship. That's always really helpful because they know exactly what they're trying to go for. I think Steph has provided a perfect example of what makes a good mentee there with her experience of being vulnerable, being able to trust and share her personal experience. Deanna, I'll let you elaborate on this point.
Yeah, if I look across the mentees that I've had, what really makes them, and something that they all had in common, they did the work. It's not just about listening and sharing. You have to put in the work, and that work could look like, I've recommended a few like LinkedIn learning paths that have helped me gain knowledge about something technical, or even if it's like jotting down what your values are or what are your non-negotiables, but do the work and show your mentor that you are equally invested.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think having the respect that your mentor is offering that time and availability is something that's really key as well. Steph?
Oh, I was going to say, this comes back to like at Box with Adam's program or my2be's program, we had a matchmaking, sort of like how you're speed dating. Like we got to try out different mentors, mentees, and see like if we would click before signing up formally for it. And that really helped because there was definitely a couple people that I matched with, but like, for example, they wouldn't, like sometimes they, like life happens. They were like a director and they wouldn't, make it, or they would kept pushing off the meeting, etc. So, having those sessions, you sort of get an intuition or intuitive feeling of, hey, like, is this person a good fit for me?
Thank you, Steph. Nice plug for our matching process there as well, why we're so good at it. Bian?
Yeah, I think other people have raised good points. And to me, from all the mentees I worked with, I found the mentorship is most effective when the mentee is willing to learn, and more importantly, willing to let me know they don't agree with my proposal or with my opinion. I think I'm not expecting the mentees to take everything I said, because I may have different background, different experience, and I may be in a different situation than they do. I welcome all the different opinions, and I'm looking forward to all the discussions. That's actually much more effective way to get to know their need, the challenges they're facing with, and it is also a great way to build trust, because I'm opening myself up, and I'm also willing to learn from them and learn from them to see their different opinions. And I found that's the most beneficial in the mentorship.
Absolutely, totally agree. And we have another question there about what advice do you have for someone that's never been a mentor? So first-time mentors who are entering the sphere.
If I could take the first crack at that, I would probably go and speak to Deanna, because it sounds like she has a really good structure and process. I think I'm inspired by what you've said earlier about I think it sounds like you have a thoughtful approach. You have a framework that you've developed, and I'm really curious about that. So maybe I need to talk to you one-on-one, and we can share notes, but I have a lot to learn from you, I'm sure. And I think just as a first-time mentor, figure out what your approach is. And I don't think that I've done it in a particularly methodical, or I haven't come up with my own theory of change or my own theory of mentoring. So maybe sort of spend some time to reflect on your approach and what you need to figure out before you jump in and possibly don't do a good job, or don't do as good a job as you could, because I'm sure I could have learned from you, Deanna, at least.
Happy to share.
Maybe Deanna, do you have anything to respond?
Oh, Ian, my door is always open, and yeah, no, of course, I do have a method, and I think the most important thing is that I never stop being nervous. By the way, every time I meet a mentee for the first time, even if I'm reaching out to them, I'm always nervous, because it's a big responsibility, and I take that. Like they're there giving their time, the mentee. So as a mentor, I want to show up the absolute best that I can be. And it's oftentimes understanding, like, we all have unconscious biases. We all come with our, history. So it's like really like checking in. It's not something you do ad hoc, like hop from one meeting to another. No, mentally prepare. But yeah, that would be my number one recommendation if you want to become a mentor.
Fantastic. And Bian, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I want to say I'm nervous too when I was in a mentorship as a mentor or mentee. Yeah, I think over time, when one becomes a more and more mature mentor, they will form their own mentorship style. But that takes time. I think if one wants to start a mentor as a new mentor, I would say try be yourself. Do not try to pretend to be somebody else. It's not suddenly you become a teacher or you become a trainer. You're still you, and you are maybe your mentee's colleague, or not in the same team, just in the same company, or you're even in a different discipline than your mentee. I think start with naturally sharing your experience, and don't tell your mentee what to do, but show your mentee what you would do in the same or similar situation, and they will naturally follow or be inspired. And over time, as you're gaining more and more experience, you will see different personalities, different styles from the mentee, and then you'll naturally form different ways of working with different types of mentees, and make sure they are getting help most efficiently.
Absolutely. Ian, you want to add to that?
Yeah, we didn't get into this as much as I thought we might have, but being clear on what you're doing as a mentor and what you're not doing. So you're not this person's manager, even if you are their manager or skip level or a peer of their manager. You're not a trained coach, you're not a therapist. There's a lot of things you're not. And so just being clear on those things so that you don't stumble into trying to be a therapist or trying to be that trainer or manager or all the things. And we probably don't have time to get into the details of that, but I'm sure there's plenty of literature out there on what all those things are. I think that's really important because people can do a lot of damage and to themselves as well as to others if you do things you're not trained for, or it's not the right context for a certain approach.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I think there's obviously I think a point in any conversation where you may even feel out of your depth, or there's things here beyond your expertise, and that's where to, especially in a corporate setting, to maybe raise the hand and say, you know, this might be where you want to go, or you might want to speak to someone about that from that capacity. Because it can, like we've seen it here today, it can become like therapy, you know, it can become like different things in different areas. It can feel like you know, sometimes maybe managing someone, which is not the idea of it. But I think that's a hugely important point actually that we've touched on, is the differences in what it is and what it isn't to be both a mentor and a mentee. And with that in mind, I am conscious of the time. I think we are just about there now. So firstly, I just want to thank everyone on the panel for joining us today on National Mentoring Day. So Diana, Ian, Bian, Steph, thank you very much for joining us. It's a very exciting day for us, obviously, at my2be. Mentoring is what we live and breathe. We have some exciting announcements coming soon with the launch of our self-service version of our product. There's available resources and guides on our website for both mentors, mentees, and managers as well, and more. So feel free to visit my2be.com for that. And if anyone wants to obviously get in touch with ourselves and any of the panel today, you're more than welcome to do so. And I once again want to thank you all for joining us today on National Mentoring Day. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you, Adam, for organizing this.
Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful day.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.